On to discussion items. Put these away. Who would like to open up discussion regarding the board library media center material adoption?
I don't mind, since I asked for this on the agenda, just try to get over there. It's a big agenda this time, huh? Yeah. All right. We passed a policy, I believe it was last year, about sexually explicit content and pornography, that we didn't want it in our school district, and then we had a policy for challenging that type of content. And then this year, we just found out about a book. In fact, it was brand new, off the shelf. It's called Genderqueer. It was just getting unpacked, hadn't even been checked out by a student yet, which is the good news. The bad news is what's inside the book. And I don't see any kids in here, but if there's anyone online, please take discretion, because the content in here is not for children under age 18, at least. Here we have boys having sex with each other and masturbating, right there. We have a reference to kink.com right here. It's right on that page. And that is an adult sex website that you have to be 18 years old to enter. But mind you, this book was accessible for 13 years and up. We have graphic descriptions of oral sex, of two boys having oral sex right there. You can see their genitalia. It's completely full frontal nudity there. And we also have the glorification of drug use, oxycodone, lorazepam, for a simple minor procedure. The issue is that, as we've been saying for quite some time, that we don't have a procedure or a policy to indicate a procedure as to how books get into the library. The site where this was located, the principal had no idea that this was in the library. Our superintendent had no idea this was in the library. And it just magically appears. And I had looked for this book before, when we had done book challenges in the past, but we didn't have it. And so I felt very comfortable that, wow, one of the worst books out there we don't have. And I should note that this is an award-winning book, too. So that whole argument about award-winning, it really means nothing. And there's almost basically no educational value to it, no literacy value. It's all comic strip. And look at all this blood. I mean, with the period, the menstrual cycle, it's like covered with blood. It looks like it's just very obscene and graphic. And I have to say that if we cannot protect the children from depraved content like this, then we have no business being here, honestly. It's just the parents send the children to school, and they entrust us that when they drop them off at the gate, that we will not do anything that could harm them intentionally. This was intentionally brought into our library, and it was to give to kids for consumption. It's pornography. And here we have a problem in our district with sexual, student-on-student sexual complaints, others with adults. There is no reason to promote anything that is so despicable and have it accessible to minors. I really, really support the idea of a procedure, because we can have accountability. At my work, everything I do is documented with a time and date, my name, and what I did. If anyone has a question, they look back and see. There's a problem with the medication reaction. There's the time I gave it, there's what I gave, there's how many milligrams. There is everything about it, including which IV I put the medication in. There are so many details about every decision I make at work. And yet here we have, in the educational system, it's so different. There is a lot of autonomy, and I wish that we could just trust all the librarians and trust all the staff. And in a perfect world, that would be great. And I think most of the staff and most of the librarians are great, and they do not have bad intentions. But obviously, this is not an honor system. We have to have accountability for when people go off the tracks and something like this happens. We can't have this happen again. It's not safe for our kids. And if I was a parent and my kid came home with this, I'm sure they wouldn't show me. But if they did, I would have lost it. This is just disgusting. So I support a policy that would have accountability, and it would also make it known that we do not want sexually explicit pornographic content in our libraries in the first place, instead of just the workaround where, oh, we can do a book challenge policy for the same wording. Instead, we should just prevent it. It'll save us time and money in the long run anyways, prevent it from getting in. And the principal will have to sign off on it as well, because in this case, neither the principal knew about it, nor the superintendent, nor the assistant. I'm assuming the assistant superintendent of education didn't know either. I didn't ask Patty, but you didn't know it was in there, right? Yeah. So that is my recommendation. I really support this policy moving forward. We've given it a year of trying to mess around and come up with a way to screen books coming in, but we really need to get something going in terms of accountability and in making sure this doesn't happen again.
Now, do you have something you want to say? Yeah, I do, but go ahead. You can go first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain a little where I'm coming from. I've been actually asking for something like this policy for a good year or so, because I'm the type of person that wants to get to the root of a problem and not just try to put a Band-Aid on it. And I do feel that having some accountability and transparency in what books get put into the library and by whom would help us get to that place where we don't have to even be spending time and money on complaints. And I do have to correct you, Candy, on one thing. The oral sex was not between two boys. The oral sex was between a girl with a dildo strapped on her and a boy. So, sorry, that was a little detail.
Well, the first picture is not with the strap on. The first picture is full nudity with a penis. Second picture is a strap on.
We're both correct.
Yes.
But, I'm not trying to make fun, but it is really a despicable book. There is, I felt very bad for the main character in the book, because she has obviously a very severe, debilitating case of gender dysphoria, or really hating herself, and her parents don't seem to care. She just goes along through several years in this book of being in pain, emotionally, psychologically, and there's no resolution to that. It's not any kind of book that has any redeeming answers or value, or other than, finding the kink.com link in the book. So anyway, that's it. Just was an example of why we need a policy that will build in some accountability, some oversight, and transparency. And I think we've all given examples of our current jobs where we have to answer to someone. We have to show our work. We have to show why we're doing something, and not just because we want to. And so I think it'll be a really good policy for the district and can help parents feel better about what's going on in their children's school.
I don't think we need this policy, because I think we have procedures where there's oversight by cabinet and by the superintendent and principals, even maybe some different things. When something comes into a school, I think there's oversight. They can check to see what it is. We can put this in there, that any books that come in, whether they're donated or bought. And I just think the wording of it is there's a few spots. I do like the part about somebody having to sign off when something comes in. So let's put that in the procedure of how things come in. I think they do that for other stuff when something comes into a school, right? Somebody has to sign off on it, that they got it, they received it. So is there a way to rework that?
As far as the process right now for donated books, I think is what you might be referring to, because when we purchase books, there's purchase orders, there's got to be approvals. A donated book goes through a different process where there isn't an oversight that includes a principal approving it.
Can we put that in?
If that's what you're asking, could we add something like that?
Yeah.
Yes.
There was some issue with the principal specifically not recalling signing off on books at all for the library, so I'm not sure if that's actually accurate.
It is to the extent that any purchases of any monies have to be approved.
So was he not aware? Or?
Well, I'd have to check specifically on that, but anytime we purchase any books, just like anybody can see them on the agenda, anybody using any of the funds, whether it be a site fund or any amount of money that comes from like me that I'm in charge of, you would need to sign off on it.
So what part of the policy did you not like, Michelle?
I just don't think we need an extra policy. Like, it can go into something else and be handled the same way, and we just don't need another policy.
We need a policy because we've been waiting for it for a year, and we've not gotten one produced by the district administrators. We've been asking for
Part
something.
of this could go in the AR of another policy that we have too.
But this is not part of a book challenge process, so we wouldn't go into that.
What I understand President Rendlin should be saying is that you could, as a board, direct me as a superintendent to come to the next meeting with a process that will be implemented that would include oversight that's being discussed, absent of having to pass a policy. Like, you could direct me to do that, and I will come forward with something.
And make sure it can get signed off.
And it would be something that would include that oversight that is being discussed.
And that would be in the form of an AR or what?
It would be a form of a procedure that we would implement district-wide that I would share with everyone.
That would be like in the handbook on the site? Is that where you would find it? The procedure?
Yeah, I mean, just like we have whatever processes we have at every site, we can include that, yes. Melissa.
Okay. I looked over it, and I don't see why we need to start a whole nother thing with a whole nother policy when we could just direct our superintendent to just, if there is nothing in place about the question is it's a donated book, then I feel like it's a lot more responsible, especially from a financial standpoint, to just direct the superintendent to get somebody to sign off on a donated book, get somebody else to look at it, only because our principals aren't credentialed librarians. I mean, the independent authority of an obligation, wholesome, like,
I don't want to put that on.
Paragraph 2, it negates the entire book challenge policy in general. I mean, guiding concepts of decency. What is this? All we have to do, instead of wasting our superintendent's time, our principal, they all have bigger jobs to deal with. And Juan, can you please get somebody else to sign off on a donated book? Somebody else to look at it. Can we just do that?
I would recommend what I'm
Yes.
hearing is it would be oversight that would be specific to the site, which in this case would be the principal, is a process where a principal, and I'm hearing that we need to be able to track down how did this book get in. Well, we would have, the documentation to support this book was put in the library on this date, and this is the person who signed off.
Because technically, obviously, I don't know that we have, but just like we accept donations, on behalf of the school district, technically, shouldn't we be getting some sort of paperwork, paper trail? If a parent donates a book, shouldn't we be having them, like this parent donated this book, a quantity of whatever, to this school? I mean, technically, we're taking in an asset. Shouldn't we
may
be
do that to some extent?
Yes.
But what I'm hearing is we need there to be oversight. And
Yes.
I'm saying that we could add that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're talking about the donations that we accept here in this. You know how we do, it could be instruments, it could be anything, something like that, where we do accept donations. It could
Well,
actually be on there.
It should apply for a book as well.
Should be applied for anything on there. And so any accountability we could do, that you could work to get that done instead.
I'm just saying the donations that are generally on the board is because there's a tax write-off, a monetary amount that the tax write-off. When someone donates a book, they don't tend to go through the district for a tax write-off.
Right.
So they serve two different purposes.
You only do that if you donate a set of books for a classroom.
Well, generally, if I go to donate something and I say I want to receive a tax write-off on this donation, it's going to go through the business office for that tax write-off, the donation forms, which ends up on our forms. Or if it's cash, right? All monetary items always go through the business office. Books like this don't funnel through the business office. And so, we're not in the position to approve or deny books and adding them to donations when there's no tax incentive.
No, yeah, I
what
acknowledge that.
But adding a process to a school site to saying, and limiting the ability for people to add to the library catalog could be possible scenarios.
And that's the point that I think is important, is the desire for the accountability is about what books go into the library. And, I want to point out what is needed, in my opinion, and why, and how we do it can be discussed. But really the only way to get to that discussion seems to be to bring up a potential policy.
Right.
So that's where I'm at with it. I don't really have a big preference on how it is done, but I want it to be known by every single principal that it's serious and they need to take it seriously, and that there needs to be documentation.
Accountability, number one, is
Right.
the accountability would work.
I think it would help. That would work if it's in a procedure,
I think-
right? They would.
Also, Jason, I just wanted to mention this, like Juan was saying, we can see when books are purchased by the purchase orders listed. However, a lot of times they just say something general, like office supplies or something like that. It's not always designated that there's actually books there.
Yeah, because in the county purchase order system, there's subject lines, and there's a board subject line. You might have 2,000 line items on one order, so what they write is books. If they wrote every line item, that book would be 5 times the size of it.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have books
Right.
this fat of every single line item that the district uses across the board. And if you really think about the amount of items that come into a district, it's hundreds of thousands of pencils. You'd have
So to assume that a principal is going to know
the
that
principal
books
sees
are
the
on-
order, right?
Right, but
It's what you see in the expenditure report is just what the board line item is, what that one little statement box
okay.
you put in. What the principal sees, or I say principal, but it's anybody who oversees the budget that it's purchased from, right? So every time you order something, it goes through a series of people who oversee that budget. So each one of those people could look at that full
okay.
order.
Got it.
So principal saying I haven't looked at the order might mean they're not looking at the actual line items, he's just looking at the overall order. We don't know that without talking to them.
Back to the original issue, I really disagree, and I do want it as a policy, because we do not have a single policy regarding this type of adoption of how it gets into the library. And again, we've been asking for this multiple times, working with the district staff, and it has not happened. So I really want something formally in policy, because there needs to be a policy that includes the same language. The perceived pornography, erotica, graphic descriptions of sexual acts, sexual violence, and or sexually explicit content. If we don't have a policy, then it's really hard to hold people accountable. And there's no reason we have, hundreds of policies. There's no reason one is going to break the bank all of a sudden. We have no procedure or policy to hold someone accountable when it's not followed. So I don't understand why this huge resistance against actually having a policy. We need it, actually. And I don't like the idea of, let's just make it a procedure, just like the name change procedure, where it floats around in somewhere and nobody can find it again. That'll be what happens with this.
We don't know that that's what will happen with this.
That's what happened in the name change procedure.
And when was that from?
2019.
Was
floated around the district.
But that's the thing. We have an entirely new superintendent. I don't see why.
I think it needs to be formal. It needs to be official so we can hold a staff accountable. If you can't say that a staff broke a policy, then how do you discipline them? I mean, honestly, it needs to be formal. It needs to be formalized. And the idea that we can't have a simple policy, this is not a big, long ordeal. I don't mind about changing some words. If you don't like the word wholesome, that's fine too. But the main things is it cannot have pornography. Principal needs to sign off. And you need to have someone signing with their title and the date and why they're putting it in. And that needs to be a formalized process. How many other millions of policies we have, and all of a sudden a tiny one like this, we can't do it? I mean, it needs to be formalized. We won't be able to hold employees accountable.
I would like to see, sorry, were you going to say something? I would like to see if, I don't know who can do this, but if any of that can fit into another one that we already have that pertains to material like stuff, and if it could go into that one, if that's easy enough to try a procedure first and see how that, let's try it, make it an actual procedure that principals people are following. I would like to try that.
Well, I don't see why a directive to our superintendent isn't sufficient. I mean, the superintendent would then, express that too.
You haven't noticed that there's so many different people, different principals getting moved, coming and going. You haven't noticed where things fall through the cracks?
Like what?
Just a lot of things.
But if it goes across the district, I don't see this isn't, specific to a certain school.
What do you mean if it goes across the district? What does that mean?
If I could just add, holding any staff accountable does not require a specific policy for that act that would be violated. I mean, we hold staff accountable and use the board policies that exist. I mean, I just want to make sure you don't have to have a policy that says don't do this to hold somebody accountable for doing something they weren't supposed to do. If we have a process that we implement that and I can't speak to anything that happened when I was in here, but if I implement a process and it's a directive for principals to follow, there's going to be accountability for that to be followed. Just like there is right now for anything that we implement that doesn't have a policy attached to it.
Yeah, I believe addressing it, giving you the authority to take care of this for accountability and work with principals would suffice.
Or at least the opportunity to take care of this outside of a whole policy, because like I said, it's just going to add time and money and additional work to our staff, which is money that we have to pay out to them. I mean, it takes away from other items that they need to do. But again, if you're confident that you can, ensure that this is going to be followed and we're asking you to take care of something, then I'm fine with it.
Can I ask you, Melissa, what you mean by it's going to cause additional money and things for staff to do?
Because someone's got to rework this policy, right? Whenever we make changes, someone's got to put it together. That is time taken away from other things that they would do. These are discussions that our superintendent and cabinet would have to have. I mean, this is time on the board. This is extending our meetings, keeping them here. It adds. So it's not when we could just say, Juan, make sure you're taking care of this, and it should be fine. And if it's not, then we can have another discussion.
Well, the problem is that we have been saying that. We have been saying we want accountability. I've said it from the dais. She has too. We've said it in private. We've talked amongst ourselves with Juan and with our leaders over here, and it's not happening. So
But this is the first time it's ever come to a board meeting, correct?
Because we had to bring it as a policy request.
We don't have to bring a policy. We can have a discussion about things.
We've been asking for this up here on the dais about accountability.
Okay.
Hasn't been done.
Okay, well, we've discussed this for a length of time. Do we need to vote on what we want to ask you to do?
As this is a discussion, what we'd be looking for is direction. So I'm hearing come up with the procedure. If there's a desire for a majority of the board to see a policy drafted, then that would need to see a majority consensus. That's
I would like a procedure.
And I would like to see if there is an existing policy that this could fit into. If there's already one that we could just fit this into.
I'm sure we can find one about curriculum. We could add it onto a curriculum policy.
Right.
But I do, I'd like the procedure idea.
And
with the oversight.
The wording, you like the wording, right? To make sure that the content doesn't follow in those categories, right?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, the way we had it written on the other one.
Same
I
as
wanted to.
The same
the
wording.
same wording
the
is
same, yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the
Okay.
idea of the signing off because I think that's
Okay.
really important.
All
And
right.
if it's a procedure, that'll go in there.
I
for
think
sure.
the curriculum one would fit on that.
See, but this is a different conversation then, because if materials or media contain one or more of the following, it shall not be allowed in any school library. That it completely negates our book challenge policy.
This is only about new books going into the library.
Doesn't
But how are
negate
we going to
anything.
know until the board has the opportunity to see them?
How are we going to know what?
How are we going to know the content of the book until it gets here?
The principal.
So the principal then has to report. Is the principal a credentialed librarian? So they are using their independent authority to see if it's perceived pornography?
Yeah.
If they can't understand it and figure it out, then they can ask Juan, what does he think?
I just want to clarify because I'm a little bit confused. Because if we're going to do a procedure, but also then look for a policy that this language will fall under, then that's saying two different things. Because if we want, I feel like what we want is we want to make sure that there's oversight.
Right.
I'm saying that we can create that in a process, and I think that theoretically and in practice, you hold me accountable as the board to make sure that it's implemented. That's the way it should work. Like that, if somebody does not follow the process that I've implemented, and we hold them accountable to that, you hold me accountable to the fact that my procedure didn't work.
What
that's we don't need a
Yeah.
policy for all of that to happen.
What is the resistance to tacking it on to a policy that we already have?
Because we have a process right now. This is the way that I feel about it. And we had what you've already pointed out, something that happened with the donated book. We don't need over one incident to have an entire policy written when we could have a process added that includes that oversight that really is the point of the entire policy. We already have a book challenge process for anything that goes in that is working to the extent of the books that we've gotten challenged. We have oversight already for purchased books. There has not been a purchased book up to this point that caused this. This is caused because of a donation. The process of donation was different. It did not include the same oversight. I'm saying that we can just include it.
I'm
like
good with
Michelle's
that.
idea. Michelle, if we have three of us agree that it should be tacked on to another policy that's similar, I don't know.
I said, or is that a possibility? So,
Okay. So
I think our superintendent
you're-
deserves the opportunity. I think our superintendent deserves the opportunity to take care of this on his own. He is the one that runs this district, and if he fails to do so, then we can hold him accountable.
Process he wants to do will work. Or
Saying that it can be done that way, yes. I'm confident,
That's all-
and
that's
I'm
all I'm
okay with
asking.
being held accountable.
and if it doesn't work, then how do we find that out?
when are you going to get the draft to us?
Have it by the time we meet again on March 10th. I can have drafts to you sooner than that. In the SU, we can look at it.
Okay, and with that, we are adjourned.
So that brings me to the question: when we have a discussion item, like we had last time, a discussion item, then what happens? Because, well, like this, we solidified what's going to happen, but at our last meeting, we had a discussion item, and it's still hanging.
Yeah, we gave the two things you requested for parent notification. We got you I gave you the case. I emailed you the case. Remember?
Yes.
I know you didn't respond, but I emailed it to you. And Michelle asked you to ask the OAG.
Yes.
What did they
Which
say?
is still pending.
They didn't answer.
No, they did not.
It's a shocker.
When's the next time you meet with them?
I have to look at
So
my
really,
calendar.
we'll have to figure out how long we're going to wait for them again, because we've been waiting all year. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
All right, we're going to adjourn at 10:08.